Hello, everyone. My name is Lexis Hanson. I'm a software engineer on Team Trailhead. The audio-video guys reminded me that I'm the last talk of the day on this stage, so thank you for being here with me. Now, just over a year ago, I was in a customer success role at Salesforce, and I spent the course of about 18 months doing everything I possibly could to make a switch to an engineering role. And for any of you that are here today, maybe you are also decided that you want to do the same thing, or maybe you're just thinking about that as something that has piqued your interest. I want to go through some of the things that I went through along the way, some of the lessons I learned, and hopefully share some of that with you to help you along that journey yourself. So forward-looking statement, please make your Salesforce purchasing decisions based on products and services that are available in Salesforce today. In today's topics, we're going to cover how to stay committed to learning, how to find the best resources and community, and how to get that developer job. Okay, we want to make sure you get the job in the end after all of this hard work that you do. So just a few years ago, this was the major thought that was in my head. I enjoy coding, and I want to become a developer, but it feels so out of reach. And prior to this, I didn't really have any technical experience. I had done some work on some MySpace profiles when I was a teenager, and I think, as of a few years ago, I had done 2 or 3 half-day coding workshops here in San Francisco, just free meetup type things. So that was it. And beyond that, you have these other doubts that kind of sink into your head, right? Where do I start? How do I find the time? And am I even capable? There's this archetype of a software engineer that it's this wildly brilliant human being where everything comes super easily to that person, and they don't even have to try very hard, and they're just really good at everything. And I don't know about you all, but I don't necessarily identify as that type of human naturally. So these were lots of things that were difficult for me to overcome. For myself, though, it was a Monday at lunchtime. I was chatting with one of my software engineer friends, and I had just come back from one of these half-day coding workshops, and I was really excited about this app I had just built, and I was chatting about it with him. He interrupted me, and he said, "Lexis, have you ever thought about doing this as a real career thing? Have you ever thought of taking this seriously?" And I laughed it off for a couple seconds. But he gave me this resource online. It's called Team Treehouse. I'll show you a link later if you want to check it out too. And that particular resource, I checked it out that night, and it was amazing for my learning style. So it had short videos interspersed with hands-on challenges. Sounds familiar to Trailhead, actually. But the content was just something that really matched my learning style. And for about 2 months, I was using that resource every night, every other night, just dipping my toe in the water. And about that 2-month mark, I finally decided for myself that, okay, this is the moment. I'm going to devote everything I possibly have to making this transition happen. I want to become a developer, and I'm going to make this happen no matter what. And as a result, I did make that happen. I did make that transition, but I want to talk to you all today about some of those things. If you're thinking about going down the same path, it's absolutely worth it. I stand here today so happy with where I've been able to start and end up. But I also want to caution you against some things that you have to think about and some of the work that goes into that process. So just jumping right in, the first thing I have for you, the first piece of advice, and this was transformational for me at the very beginning, is to pick one programming language and stick to it at the very beginning. Okay? Find a project that supports something you really want to build, and let that be the language that you start with. Find something you're interested in, and don't focus on layering in frameworks or libraries for at least the first few months. So JavaScript was my language of choice, because I was interested in web development. But I didn't even think about looking at React, for instance, for the first 6 months. I spent that entire time just focusing on vanilla JavaScript and what it meant to write if-else statements, for loops, data transformations. And it made it that much easier when I finally did layer in those extra things to have that confidence and the ability to finally tackle new stuff. Okay. The next thing I have for you is to get your time in. This can be really challenging. There's going to be days where you're way more excited to code than others, and that's just the ebb and flow of doing something new. For myself, something that worked really well was to commit to a certain number of hours that I could focus on coding each week. And this didn't have to be me actively coding at the laptop, right? It could also include watching tech talks or reading documentation, just doing anything that's in the same flavor of learning about this big, huge thing that I want to do. For me, that number was 20 hours per week. That's what I could reasonably commit to. I was working full time, so I was able to get like 2 to 3 hours in on weeknights, and then the remainder on weekends. Fully recognize that everyone has their own life situation at home, though, and you might have to do less or more than that. Most importantly, just pick that number and stick to it as best as you can. Be consistent, be coding 6, 7 days a week if you can, and find some balance in your life as well. I also want to point out you have to kind of be prepared to make sacrifices. This is a marathon and not a sprint. And sometimes you just have to say no to some social events. You're making this huge transformation in your life, this career change that a lot of people often spend 4 years going to school for. So you're going to have to make some sacrifices, and your family and friends, hopefully, will understand that once you let them know this huge goal that you have for yourself. Also, the screenshot on the screen there that you see, this is a tool called Rescue Time. Not necessarily recommending it for you all, but it was a tool that worked really well for me. It's just an automated time tracking tool. So it would track in the background anything that I was working on in terms of my tabs or programs, and it would categorize my time spent. So it, more or less, it just kept me honest in what I was working on. So some days you feel like you're coding for 4 hours, and turns out it's only 30 minutes. So that was a nice way to make sure that, like, oh no, I still have to do a little bit more and get that time in. Delayed gratification, I like to talk about this concept because if anybody's heard of like the marshmallow study? No? Okay. So this concept is an idea that for folks that are able to forego short-term rewards for that much better long-term payoff, that's one of the best indicators of successful people. So if you're feeling really sad and like you just need something to hold on to overcome, I like to go back to that idea. Okay, the next thing I have for you is to shortlist your best resources. Once you finally feel confident enough to tell people that you're on this path to trying to become a developer, a funny thing happens where anybody who's ever coded ever will come up to you and say, oh, you should check out this video, or you should like go read this blog post, or check out this website. And before you know it, if you're like me, you end up having like 40 Chrome tabs open, and you don't know where the heck you need to look or start for that day. So my advice here is to ask people you trust for recommendations. They'll often point you to the really good stuff. But even still, don't force yourself to stick to a resource if it isn't working for you. You're not a failure just because someone you really admire told you to go check something out and you didn't like it. You just have to find something that works well with your learning style, find something that resonates, and you'll figure it out. Okay? So this one might sound a little confusing to don't context switch, except when you should. And what I mean to say here is that, let's say you have 2 hours or so that you want to get in for the day, and you're 45 minutes into trying to solve like an algorithm problem, and for the life of you, it's just not working. You're really annoyed. Nothing is working in the way that you want to, and you're like ready to throw your laptop against the wall. I don't know. Please stop. Please don't keep forcing that. Like, switch to something else. Take a break if you need to. But also consider that you can do something else that brings you happiness that's still related to your learning. So that could be, I don't know, coding some extra stuff on your website or working on a portfolio project. Could be something even passive, like watching a tech talk, reading documentation. And my advice here is just to look for those positive moments of joy, like just something happy that you can associate each day when you're coding, because it's going to make it that much easier to come back the next day, the next day, and the next day. Okay, probably goes without saying, but find others to learn with. Build things with a team. So as you start working on portfolio projects, it's kind of a hack. You can build things with 2 or 3 people. You all get to put that on your resume, right? And the nice thing is you can focus in and hone in on the parts of a project that you're really excited about. And you can showcase those things to people when you're interviewing. Find mentors, ask for code reviews. You might think, Lexis, I don't have a network. I don't work in tech right now. I don't know any developers. What am I supposed to do? And this next bullet point is especially for you then. Find a forum to ask questions and build community. Trailblazer community groups, those are a great place to start if you're trying to go on the Salesforce route. Meetups, right? You can go to meetups.com and find informal meetups in your area to meet with people about tech that you're interested in. Twitter is actually a really, really great resource. There are some hashtags that I still love to follow, 100 Days of Code and Code Newbie. it's really neat. On 100 Days of Code, people will go in and post progress updates on things that they're working on each day. Most of these folks are also self-taught, trying to transition to an engineering role. And Code Newbie has blown up. They started as like a Twitter chat thread, and they now have their own podcast, their own Slack group. So those are nice things to check out. Also, practicing interview questions with others is really helpful. It's a really daunting thing to go into an interview if you've never done it before and stand at a whiteboard and solve algorithm problems while somebody's just standing behind you judging you the whole time. So it's good to get some of those feelings out ahead of time with your friends or some other people that are going through this with you. I used to have people come over, like 2 of my developer friends, and they were much better than me because they were already working as software engineers. And we would practice some algorithm questions together. This was like on Thursday nights once a week. And it was nice because we would solve the same problems, but I could see their implementation that had like, better time complexity or whatever, and then I could learn from their solution. Interviewing.io, I wanted to point this out as well. It's a great resource. It's free, which is nice. And the way that it works is you do mock interviews, so they're kind of technical phone screens, and on the other side of that phone screen is somebody who's employed typically at a top tech company as an engineer, and you go through the whole phone screen together, and at the end they'll give you a performance review of your feedback, so they'll let you know how you did. The best part is it's completely anonymous, so if you make a fool of yourself, no one knows. Okay, so it's free, anonymous, and it's very close to the real thing. It's a really great thing to check out. Okay, the next thing I have for you is to get practical experience. So this helps overcome that conundrum of, the entry-level job posting that wants 2 years of experience, but how are you supposed to get experience if no one's willing to hire you yet? We as developers are really lucky in that we can overcome that informally. We don't have to be formally employed at a company in order to have experience, but we can still sometimes even get paid for it. Okay? A lot of people aren't that lucky. So some things you can do: publish your own projects, do some freelance work, contribute to open source, or help out nonprofits. If you're not familiar with open source, that is more or less when people release their code online for anyone to see, and then you can go in and contribute to it as well. And when it comes to open source, you don't necessarily have to contribute code for the first contribution. A lot of projects, they need help with their documentation and the instructions for how to use their code. And you as newcomers to these projects are some of the best people to help out with that information. And they love those types of contributions. When it comes to nonprofits, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of nonprofits out there that need dire help with their websites or automating their Salesforce instance. I guarantee you they would love to have any one of you go in and help them fix some of that stuff for them. Okay? All right, so once you've built that foundational knowledge and you're ready to start interviewing, make sure you reach out to your connections, right? Like, some of this goes without saying, but I want to make sure that we're reinforcing this and talking about how you go about this process in a smart way. I would say 80% of your job-seeking time should be spent connecting with people for opportunities, and only 20% should be spent, actually applying for the jobs. Always see if you have a connection at a company before applying cold. And remember that many companies offer referral bonuses, so your connections are often really happy when you ask for them to refer you. And that's like a weird thing for us to remember sometimes. I have a screenshot here. This is just a very vanilla template that you might use to reach out to somebody. I would say you can add 1 or 2 sentences in here to personalize it. But this is all you have to say when you reach out to somebody. Say hi, be direct, tell them that you are really excited about this position, and ask if they're willing to refer you. And again, let's say you're looking at me and you think, Lexis, I don't have these connections. I don't work in tech right now. What am I supposed to do? And my response to you is to reach out to everyone else. There's this concept of reverse recruiting, which is reaching out to recruiters and employers instead of waiting for them to find you. You can look for people on LinkedIn or elsewhere that are hiring for, managing, or there are individual contributors in the roles that you want to be working in. And keep it simple. So including your outreach messages, who you are, sell yourself in 1 to 3 sentences. Say exactly what you're looking for, a personal connection if possible, and then name your ask. Would you be willing to chat with me for 15 minutes? Right? If you say that to a recruiter and they say yes, that's your first phone conversation. Would you be willing to refer me to this role after chatting with me for a few minutes? That's something you can say to somebody that's a manager or an individual contributor in the role. And if this is just like a long list of things and it's hard for you to remember, I can also leave you with the words of Inigo Montoya from The Princess Bride. Same thing, right? Polite greeting, your name, relevant personal link, and then manage expectations or name your ask. Okay? And just so you know that I'm not selling you snake oil here, this is some proof that it works, okay? So this top screenshot here is an email I sent just over a year ago. So I'll read it out loud briefly. Hi, I applied to 2 roles on your team that both look interesting, front-end JavaScript engineer and UX engineer. I've been working on transitioning to an engineering role from customer success, and while my background is a little different than most, I'd love to chat with you more to see if I could be a good fit. Would you be open to a conversation sometime next week? I've attached my resume in case you'd like to take a look. And the reply. Hi, Lexis. Thanks for reaching out. Really appreciate your interest, and your background looks great as well. I've copied Blank on my team, who is taking the lead in the hiring process. He'll be in touch with you early next week to find some time to chat. Meanwhile, if you have any questions, please let me know. Okay? I was so happy when I got this reply because I had been applying to postings at the company, I think 4 or 5, and I just got like outright rejected. Okay? Just not even talking to a recruiter. They didn't even want to have a conversation with me, and I got through to the hiring manager. This email is especially important to me because this is the team that I work for now. And this would not have happened had I not sent that email. Okay? So that's all I have for you today. I'm going to be off to the side if anyone has any questions. This deck will be released after the talk, so you'll have access to these resources and you can check them out, but I'm happy to give you some direct links here as well off to the side. Thank you, everyone.